Hello again, my friends. Lori Ashcraft here, back with another episode of Viva La Evolution, produced by Recovery and Resilience Solutions, which is a training and consulting branch of Crestwood Behavioral Health. And today I have the pleasure of sharing with you an amazing guy who I've known for maybe 20 years when he started teaching peer support classes. And learned so much from him over the years. And we're back together. He's working at Crestwood as a trainer. So wonderful to be back with your old friends, Mike, Gloriana, Chris. I love it. I love new people too, but anyway. Okay, so there's a couple things I want you to listen for with Mike. It's all so good. So just listen, just enjoy this. Just sit back with, some tea and your dog or your cat and just enjoy this. We're going to talk about experiences we've had together, learnings we've had together. Pay close attention to our conversation about pathologizing everything. I think that's a real heads up there. Another point would be all the qualities he mentions that make good peer support specialists. And also listen up when we talk about our own personal wounds and how giving back from the point of a wound is such a powerful healing experience. So I don't want to take up any more time because Mike and I talk for a long time and I want to save all our minutes for Mike. So with no further talk, let's bring in Mike. Hi, Mike. I am so delighted to have you join us today.
Hi, Lori. I'm so happy to be here. It's great to see you again.
No, you too. I was thinking today how far we go back. I remember having you in a class even at the
Yep.
UA training. Do you have any idea what year that was? Or
2002.
oh, was it? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so we were just beginning to talk about recovery and maybe a little bit about peer support at that point.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I remember that you were co-teaching it with Beth Stone King.
Yeah.
And I had worked in the field as a special education teacher and other kind of jobs. And in vocational rehabilitation, it being in your class with Beth, it really opened my eyes to a
Uh-huh.
different way of doing things.
Uh-huh.
And it also gave me a sense of maybe I could be at home in this whole voc rehab role um, because um, uh, because in our course we talked about how sharing about our own recovery stories, whatever role we were in, could really build relationship and create a dynamic where the person steps into their greatest strengths. And so, I remember being like, oh, this is going to be more interesting than I thought, this class.
What I remember about that class is because the whole class was made up of voc rehab counselors, and this was some kind of a next step or something for them, is Beth and I were trying to help people not just fill out forms on people. And so we said, let's do a practice where you don't have a form and you just listen to the person and see what happens. And that was an amazing experience for people. They felt like they weren't doing their job if they weren't the one in control filling out the form. What an eye-opener that was. And then the next eye-opener was that they got exactly the right information from people when they just listened. So yeah, I learned a lot from that too.
Yes. Yes. Some really great people were in that class along with you and Beth. I remember
Jim
Jim
Dunn was in
Dunn
there.
was in
Uh,
there.
Tad Gary was in
Pat
there.
Gary, yep.
Uh, some women from Tucson. I can't remember their names.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great class. Yeah. Well, you know, then you went on in your work and we kept seeing you as you referred people and we fell in love with you and we tried to get you to come to work for us
Yes.
and you did.
Yes, yes. I remember initially, I felt so torn because of two things. One was that I really loved the role that I had because I'd work with people and I would see them step into, going to peer support training at Meta, it was called at that time. I'd see them going back to college, and it was an amazing role to be in. Um, but as I got to know more about Meta at the time, it was kind of like my dream job. I never thought that I could be asked to do it or do it. But and so then when you did ask me, I was really excited about it, but my mom and dad had just died that year. And I remember my mom had died just months before. And
Yeah.
I just felt like it was so much. I felt, you know what I felt like? I felt like I don't want to come into this new organization with all the grief that I was experiencing and I remember one thing you said to me. You said, um, you said something to the effect of, you know, that's kind of why we are interested in you, Mike, is because you're someone who you've shared, has your own lived experience, and this is the kind of job where you'll be in an environment where you get to be yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we also think that you'll be in this new role and feel a sense of hope and meaning and purpose. So of course we recognize what pace you want,
Yeah.
but the Lori nudge. um, there's no time better than right now.
Yeah.
Because you're exactly who you need to be,
Yeah.
where you need to be if you
Yeah.
decide to do this. I'm not sure if I'm doing justice to
Oh no,
how beautifully you said it, but I felt like,
that sounds just right. Yeah. And while we're on the subject, you and I have shared our personal stories
yep,
over the years. And I've always been inspired by your story, Mike. I mean, not just your story, but I know you've had family members you've supported. But do you feel okay telling us a little bit about your story?
sure, sure.
Okay.
So let's see. So I actually just watched your story
Okay.
on the podcast,
Yeah.
and I liked how you said that it really resonated with me. I think I was born with certain kinds of possibilities within me.
Mhm.
As I had many family members in previous generations who had challenges with mental health and substance use, and there, it seemed like that if I look at my family members, there were those who kind of went in the direction of challenges with mental health and substance use, and those who went into the helping fields,
Ah, ah,
and so I feel like I was born with maybe, I was very sensitive, and I think that I had some kind of traumatic experiences during my upbringing, that I forget how you said it, but it was like it kind of opened the passageway
yeah.
for some of those
Mhm.
those vulnerabilities to
Yeah.
become more pronounced.
Yeah. The vulnerabilities were there for me. They were there for me, and probably under ideal circumstances, they wouldn't have blossomed.
Yep.
But um, the circumstances happened that pull them forward. And, I sometimes might think that that's not a mistake, that sometimes we end up in a place where we get the wounds we need to shape us spiritually, even physically and
Yep.
mentally, because we're destined uh, to give back from the point of the wound, because that's the most healing experience, to give back from the point of the wound. I mean, you can give back flipping burgers and that'll help. But when it comes from the wound, it heals us a little bit more and the person. a lot. So yeah, I agree with you. There's those wounds.
Yeah. And so let's see, I never really fit the mold of what was expected of boys and young men. And and one of my gifts is that I'm really not good at not being myself. And I, when I was growing up, I had a wonderful mom who was just very
Oh,
nurturing, and like would play video, like we'd watch TV, and Sesame Street said it's okay for boys to cry, and my mom was like all over that. She was just such a great, open-hearted, open-minded person, and my dad
that
was
that's
too.
a stop
For
you right there.
Yeah,
Just a minute. I fell in love with your mom when I started going to the state hospital.
yeah,
And there she was, just a flaming advocate for the people in there. She held no punches, she was amazing. And I didn't know she was your mom. I just thought, who is that woman? And then I later found that she was your mom.
yeah,
A wonderful, amazing woman. Yeah.
yeah. And she was a great role model. And I think that there were things that happened in the world and in my family's life that became more challenging. My parents' marriage, they stayed together and they always loved one another, but my mom kind of stayed with the 60s love and peace and
Yeah.
help, and
Yeah.
my dad became a little bit more conservative. And he had a bunch of disappointments in life where he would have some, I don't know, wasn't as accepting. And so anyway, but I think that the hardest, you know, um, trauma that I experienced as a child was from kids at school. I just experienced a lot of bullying. I
Yeah.
was very, very thin. I had teeth that stuck out, and I got called a lot of names, and a lot of people. I didn't even know what gay meant, but I had so many people calling me the gay word or the FAG word and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so I started to try to not be myself and try to be like my brother a little bit more, a
Yeah.
lot more. And I sort of, just to make a long story short, I actually became I shut down a lot of who I really was just out of self-protection, and just became like a human doing, like
Mhm.
studying a lot, getting good grades. I worked at a pizza restaurant since I was 14, saving money for college, and I worked out over and over again because I didn't want to be so skinny, and drank a bunch of milk protein shakes, and I just wanted to change who I was.
Yeah.
And by the time I was like 16, 17, I got my braces off, and people were pretty much like not teasing me anymore.
Yeah.
But inside, I still felt
Oh,
horrible. I
yeah.
still felt
Yeah.
like I was really stupid. I was really ugly, that I could never talk. I would always be worried people would make fun of me. And so I just got really quiet. Um, I kept a strong inner life. I always did writing and reading, and
Mhm.
I had close relationships with some members of my family.
Mhm.
And so I think, and I started having like depression, anxiety when I was 16, 17, but I didn't realize that what it was. I
Yeah.
actually thought I had asthma because I couldn't breathe,
Yeah.
at night.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I also thought my teeth were really messed up to the point where my face didn't fit together.
Yeah.
And I'd go to all these, doctors, dentists, and be like, no, they're fine,
Yeah.
and I just thought, well, if I wanted to be a writer, if I become a famous writer, I can earn money, and then I can get plastic surgery to fix my face. And then I won't have to hold it in such a way so people don't notice how ugly I am.
You know,
And
that
I didn't,
dysmorphia is pretty common, I think, with
yeah,
depression. We just don't see. I mean, I've had that my whole life. There's been times in my life when I had no idea what I look like.
yeah,
Because I would think, oh my gosh, I'm really, really fat, or let's see, what were some of my other things? My legs look silly. I mean, just stuff. that we come up with, and then we believe it, and we look in the mirror and we see it,
Yes,
but nobody else
yes.
sees it. Yeah,
And no matter what anyone else said, I didn't
yes,
believe them,
yeah.
and so I remember then I went to college. I saved my money, and I also got a partial scholarship to go to an art school right outside of
Sarah
New York
Lawrence,
City.
right? Sarah
Say it
Lawrence?
again.
Sarah
Sarah
Lawrence?
Lawrence, yes.
Yeah.
And it was the hardest transition in my life, that first year, being away from my family, being around people who were so much different from the folks I grew up with.
Yeah.
And I felt like, the kid from a small town, like the farm boy among all these like very, cultured, interesting people. And I didn't talk much to people. And it ended up actually being the best thing in the world for me, because I actually, I sort of had a mental health major challenge my first couple of years.
Mhm.
And but the diversity there in the people that I met and gradually learned to be comfortable with taught me that it was okay to be different. And I had many role models, teachers, fellow students who received mental health services, and it was just like going to the dentist. I had many role models who were living openly as people who are in the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, yeah,
And just to make a long story short, it was like, big change.
yeah.
Pulling up and remembering who I really was came
Yes,
with a lot of like really hard stuff.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought I would lose my family because despite all of the good things about my family, we were raised in a religion that said being LGBTQ plus was sinful. And
Mhm.
so I thought I would lose my whole family. And I think that was the hardest part for me.
Mhm.
Like suddenly it was as if my whole family died, and I was so ashamed of myself and hated myself, and still struggling with the body dysmorphic stuff.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to end my life.
Mhm.
I also had a situation where someone I trusted took advantage of me when I was in a vulnerable state. And I, look back on it now and I realize it was sexual abuse. At the time, I just blamed myself.
Yeah,
And
of course.
and and that was like that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I dropped into the deepest depression. I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. I would wake up and be paralyzed and could see what was around, but I couldn't move. And it was
Mhm.
all, all emotional in nature. And again, though, I thought it was all physical. I thought there was physically something wrong with me.
Mhm. I don't
Finally, I had a
think I
friend
know that.
whose dad went for psychiatric services at the local community health center.
Mm.
And he said, Mike, I think you are depressed. And this clinic really helped my dad. So I went in, and the first doctor I had was nice, but he wasn't very helpful. Just didn't really talk much, gave me some medicine that really swelled up my tongue. It was hard to say certain words. And, I shook a lot. And so I just was like, no way am I doing this.
Yeah.
And I didn't go back, but then things got a lot worse. And I was faced with having to leave school. So I went back and I just got lucky.
Yeah.
I had a doctor who was trained in Poland and France and took a whole different approach,
Uh,
and didn't medicate me right away, because he got to know me first.
mhm, mhm.
And literally he created space for me to find my voice.
Yeah.
My first few sessions were me saying, but I really just, I've been trying to, and he wouldn't finish my sentences. He just listened, and then every once in a while he'd go, what I'm getting is that you're really struggling. You've got these thoughts about your face
Mhm.
and you're not eating. Um, you're worried that you lose your family. This is a very natural, ordinary human reaction to what you're going through.
Oh, wow.
And
Isn't that
and I
perfect?
think,
Just normalize the
yeah,
experience. Yeah.
yep. He said, given the fact that you are putting yourself through school, the fact that, you're still getting okay grades,
Yeah.
and you're here, I really think that working together, and I don't want to just do meds with you. I want to meet with you an hour a week
Mhm.
and do therapy as well. And I gradually found my voice to speak what was underneath all of it. And he just helped me greatly. Eventually, he did try some medication that worked okay for me. It was still old school medication, had some side effects. But really, it just started to get gradually better. Like I saw him on Wednesday, so Wednesdays were sort of okay, and then it became Thursday and Tuesday, and eventually, my stomach issues were better.
Yeah.
I still had the body image stuff, but I was able to understand that it came from an emotional place. So I started to try to, in self-talk. He encouraged me to do self-talk.
Ah,
First, he said, I encourage you to try positive self-talk. So instead of saying Mike is so ugly, say Mike is so handsome. Instead of Mike is so stupid, Mike is so smart.
yeah.
He said,
Yeah.
try it for a week. Came back a week later. I said, it didn't work for me. Felt like I was sending a Hallmark card to myself.
Uh,
So he said, try accurate self-talk. And that worked. I'm so
say
Stu,
what that is.
huh?
Give us an example of that.
So instead of I'm so stupid, I would catch the thought, I'm so Stu. Actually, I got an okay brain. I'm
Okay.
so ugh.
Yeah.
Actually, no one really focuses that much on that part of me. I've got a good heart, and I could do
Okay.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just for me, it just practicing it regularly helps those negative thoughts,
Yeah.
uh, if not totally go away, become more manageable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so,
It seems to neutralize them a little bit.
yes,
Might still be there, but they sort of have the punch they had.
absolutely. And eventually I got to a place like today, I can say, I'm really smart. I kind of had to graduate to positive self-talk.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
and just the rest is like continued progress throughout my schooling and making friends. I began to read my creative writing and open readings, and I got really good grades, and I graduated. I was on top of the world, but I didn't know what to do next.
Yeah.
So I did what I really wasn't prepared to do is I applied for graduate school and got into New York University. And it was a very different kind of college experience. Big classrooms, not a
Mm-hmm.
lot of feedback from professors. I actually had some really good professors, but they were kind of, it was just a different
Yeah.
approach. At
Yeah.
Sarah Lawrence, the classes were 15 people, and we saw our instructor one-on-one every other week. So it was very nurturing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the adjustment, plus I was in a relationship where I was receiving harm and of a variety of kinds, and thought I couldn't count on my family, and just thought, well, no one else is going to want me. So I stayed in that for 6 years.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yep. And I look back now and I think we were both very just two ill-equipped young men.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have forgiven this person and recognize that, life is life. And I learned so much from
Well,
that.
let's go back because you've said a couple times that you were afraid you'd lose your family.
Yep.
How did that play out?
Well, things got worse with the domestic violence situation I was in,
Mhm.
and I could no longer live with him, and I
Mhm.
couldn't afford to live by myself in New York City. So I finished all my courses, and with my doctor's encouragement, he said, just go home for a few months, work on your thesis, and you don't have to tell anyone anything you don't want to, just give him a chance. I also learned later that he had been in conversation with my mom.
Oh,
He didn't tell her anything, but he was just
yeah,
like, Mike's nervous about coming home. And and
yeah.
uh and so I went home just supposedly for a few months, and I stayed because I gradually came out to all of my family, and even my dad eventually was just very supportive.
Uh,
um, I I got a job as a first teaching assistant Well, anyway, so you asked about my family.
Mm.
So, it surprised the heck out of me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that today people might not, people I think still there's parts of the world where it's hard to come out and you still face
Oh, yeah,
getting,
yeah.
getting disconnected from your family, et cetera.
Mm.
And it was in the middle of it was 1984 to 1990, and HIV was prevalent. It was a
Mhm.
scary time.
Great
And
time.
so but I took that risk with my doctor's encouragement.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
because down deep, I knew we'd get there together as a family. I was just afraid it would be hard along the way, and it just
yeah.
wasn't as hard as I thought.
Huh, huh. That's good for people to know. I mean, we all have
Yep.
different situations and circumstances, but I think something most of us have in common is we make things a lot worse than they really are because we're scared.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Literally, my dad, so I was also a playwright in the early days of being in Phoenix, and I wrote a play. It was a parody. It was called Watersheds 129. Are gays competent to raise houseplants? It was a satire,
Yeah.
right? About, the process of should LGBTQ people be able to adopt children? Because back then it wasn't
Yeah. Yeah.
prominent. And I remember, like, I told everyone in my family about it except my dad. And he just happened to hear about it. And he said, "Can I come?" And I said, "Okay, Dad, we need to talk." And I told him what the topic was. And he was like, "Oh, that's fine." And afterwards, he
Huh.
was like, "That was great. We need to get you an agent." He was like my biggest
Oh,
supporter.
wow. Isn't that great?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
My,
that's
my
great.
dad.
Yeah. You know, I don't want to, I hesitate to bring this up because I love the role that you're on,
Yeah.
but I just want to go back and shine the light on something that you brought up earlier because it's something we don't talk about very much. And it's how we pathologize. It's like in our business, the first thing people want to do to us is name what's wrong with us,
Yeah.
give us a diagnosis. And then they kind of forget about us and they start relating to the diagnosis. And they read into everything we say and do is they interpret it from a diagnostic perspective. Not everybody's like that, of course, but in fact, maybe it's not as bad as it used to be. But I know when I was going through kind of the depths of my treatment, um, everything I did got diagnosed. Um, and and people would diagnose me differently. So I'd end up with different diagnosis, which was very confusing. So I really, oh, I just got such a passion about let's stop doing that to people. I mean, I know in the forms to get reimbursed, you have to write a diagnosis, but write it and then don't weaponize it.
Right.
Don't let it determine how you see me or how you relate to me. And I remember teaching this to our crisis programs and saying, let's say I'm home brushing my teeth, and there's a knock on the door, and it's the police because somewhere along the line I got put on an outpatient commitment. So my case manager could call the police and say, "Go pick up Lori because she's not taking her medication," or "We heard that she got mad at someone at the grocery store," or "She mentioned to a friend that she uh, was, feeling really bad about her life." And so, in comes the police. They they say, "We were taking you to the crisis clinic." And I'm like, "What happened? What did I do?" And they may or may not say anything, but they take me to the squad car, and to be placed in a squad car, you have to be handcuffed. So now I'm handcuffed, like I've done something criminally wrong. I'm put in there, and I've driven off to this place. I may or may not have ever been there before. It's mostly white inside. It's It's not cozy and warm and accepting. It's kind of clinical and cold.
Yeah.
And by now, I'm kind of mad. Thank God I had the courage to get mad. And so I might be kicking and screaming. So instead of seeing that as a normal response like your doctor did, I
Yeah.
love that part of your story. The doctor says, well, that's kind of normal. Yes, you know. So instead of, I mean, but typically we would say, oh, Lori's kicking, screaming, cussing. Good thing they brought her in because she is now probably psychotic and way out of control, probably hypermanic. I mean, they'd come up with a bunch of words. And then they
Yeah.
would, try to restrain me or do something with me. But what if someone came up to me and said, Lori, you know how you're acting right now? This kicking, screaming stuff. I just want you to know that that's really normal and really understandable. If someone brought me in here, uh, and I didn't know why, and I didn't know where I was going, and I was scared and I was mad, I'd act that way too. So, you know what? You're just being normal right now. You know what that would do for me? I would go, thank God someone gets me instead of holding me off, with a diagnosis and some kind of a treatment plan or something. Yeah. So I'm so glad you brought that up. I love that.
It reminds me of a story I remember from you. I don't know when.
Yeah.
You were working in a crisis center, and there was someone who was really, really upset. And I don't know exactly what happened, but they eventually were on the floor, lying down,
Yeah.
being really angry.
Yeah.
And I remember you said that you laid down right next to this person,
Yes, I remember that.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just listened, and asked this person how they were feeling and what they needed, and validated how they were feeling, and that really stuck with me.
That wasn't a crisis clinic. That was out on the street.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah.
Wow.
And and actually it was a case where the the situation warranted um, some intervention
Yeah.
because there was a suicide aspect to it. Um, but if I'd have been there, I know I could have talked the person down,
Yeah.
but I couldn't. And so they put her on the ground and handcuffed her hands behind her back.
Mhm.
If you want to feel helpless and hopeless, get on the ground with your, I mean, you can't, it's hard, you can't get up. Your face is on the ground. Um, and yeah, and I didn't even think about it. It was just a heart thing. And I just got down on my knees and then on my belly right beside her and just said, what are we going to do now?
Oh.
Yeah, what are we going to do? And I said, do you want to stand up? She said, yes. So I said, okay, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to pull on your arm a little bit. You get up on your knees and I'll hold you and then you get to your feet. She said, okay. So she did. So now we're in at least a more respectful position. We're not on the ground. And from there, I mean, you can't stop this process once it starts. So the police wanted to take her they let me get in the car with her because I think by now they were just glad someone could manage this because they didn't really want to. And they seem like good, there are some really good officers out there
Yes.
that
Yes.
can be very helpful. So we got her to the clinic and things settled down. And I think she spent the night. I can't remember. But she was back the next day. She was a peer support person that just had a rough time. And, in the beginning, we don't know, we revert to our old options because we haven't practiced new ways of responding to ourselves. Um, and yeah, it was a real learning experience for both of us.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
And so like that illustrates something I've learned from you too, which is that no matter where we might come into a situation where someone is in in an intense place with their emotions. That the more that we can involve that person in the solution,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
the
absolutely.
the less they're going to need us in the future as they learn that self-efficacy. Like you just laid down with her. Yes, what are we going to do now?
Yeah,
Your voice said so much that you cared, and just kind of asking her step by step to kind of lead you
yeah,
to
yes,
stand up.
exactly.
And that's something I've learned about my own recovery, because like I was telling you, I lived with thoughts of suicide for um, uh, between the ages of 18 and probably 36 or so. And they still come up once in a while. But
Mhm,
I'm really good at steering the wheel and,
mhm, mhm.
using my coping skills. But there was a time when I didn't have those steering tools.
Yeah, yeah.
And the times that really made a difference for me were when I had supporters who didn't jump in and try to fix me, who
Mhm,
didn't jump in and take over,
mhm, mhm.
who talked with me, who listened to what I was going through, and and asked me what I felt would help in the situation. And
Mhm.
over time, I was able to do that. After getting that kind of support, I was able to do that for myself, kind of like my own peer support.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've seen that work so many times in these 20 plus years I've been in this field, is that when we don't overreact,
Mhm,
and we might check in quickly to see if person took any action yet that could end their life, or hurt themselves. We've got that time to sit and be with that person,
yeah.
and so many times just listening,
Oh, I
and
think so powerful. Just the
and
presence, just being present.
yes,
Yeah.
and having the person, giving space for that person to identify what they need to feel safe, and express preferences, even if it's a situation where where our company said it's important that we tell someone else, like our supervisor, to involve them in that process, and say, um, as we discussed, when we first met about, confidentiality, there's times when I do need to, at minimum, bring my supervisor in. Would
Mhm.
you be willing to be part of that process with me? And I've
Yeah.
just seen such amazing things happen with that. And I don't know, I feel like I'm going off topic, but
No,
um,
you're right on topic.
okay.
Um, and I'm glad you brought that up because
Yeah.
I think that's a dilemma that peer support folks get in a lot is how do when something risky comes up, when do they take it upstream? And
Yep.
how do they take it upstream? And what you're illustrating is you don't take it upstream alone.
No.
You take the person with you. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
very best way to go.
it is. And I learned that from you, Lori.
Well, I thought I learned it from you, but we'll see. I got to tell you one other thing I remember is because everybody loved you, Mike. I mean, anybody who's ever had a class from you loves you to the heart. And I remember coming to work early one day. I think it was about 7 o'clock or something. And I'm walking through the parking lot and I see highway patrol, a police, some kind of police car in the parking lot. He's not parked in a parking space, he's just parked there. And he's walking around outside of his patrol car. And I think, oh, I wonder if there's a problem. So I went over to him and I said, is there a problem? And about that time, someone in the back seat of the patrol car throws a shoe out the window.
Wow.
And he looks at that and he looks at me and said, yeah, I got a problem here. He explains that he picked this woman up. I don't even remember the story, but anyway, he said, I'm gonna have to take you to the crisis because she says, no, take me to Mike Zeeb. And he says, well, okay, but where? So she tells him how to get there. And now she's refusing to get out of the car until he finds Mike Zeeb. I said, well, I think I can help. Let me go run around and see if he's here yet. And you weren't there, but you did get there in about a half hour, and he patiently waited. And then you came, and I don't know if you even remember that, but
I do.
okay,
I know who you're referring to.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I
another story of how you can just keep something at a simple level without turning it into a catastrophe.
yes, it's so true.
Yeah.
So true. I have just I was telling you yesterday, I have, you know, the opportunities I've had um, related to meta services, recovery innovations, and now Crestwood have given me the greatest sense of meaning and purpose in my life.
Uh,
And I'm continually, because you know I'm like you said in your story on the podcast, I'm not recovered,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm continually in process. And I believe all paths work for people. Yes, if someone says I'm recovered, I honor that.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm always in process.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I have to use my coping skills every day.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, working in a place where I get to see all the, we're working in a place where I'm able to really live out my meaning and purpose, where I'm able to see that all the stuff that I've been through, even the really embarrassing, hard stuff, almost every one of those things I used to think I wish I could white out from my life
Mhm.
came in handy in
Yes.
peer support,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And enabling me to connect with people and relate. I feel like I've been through a lot of different kinds of circumstances,
Mhm.
um, and um, and and found a lot of different ways that worked for me. And at the same time, I recognize that everybody has their own way. Um, so employment has been, employment in a meaningful role
Mhm.
has been probably one of my two biggest things that keeps me well and strong.
Yeah,
Um,
I would echo that.
yeah.
In fact, I did a workshop for some folks in New York last week, and I came to that point of saying, being able to work in a situation where I could use my wounds to help heal other people um, has kept me as well as I've been. And the other co-presenter said, oh my gosh, me too. Work saved me. But flipping burgers probably wouldn't have done it. You know, it had
Right,
to be a
right.
place where we could give back from our experience. Yeah. Which is why I think
Absolutely.
we've been also committed to peer support. We know that's what's going to heal people, and they in turn heal other people. It's just a
Yes,
magic. Yeah.
yes. And I know people who have started out with their referring party saying, no, you're not ready for this, and
Oh, yes.
this is too stressful for you.
Yes.
And I see them come to a place where now they're like directors of programs. One
Yes.
of our graduates recently told me that she is the executive director of a recovery program in Alaska.
Oh
Someone
my
who came
gosh. Yeah.
through PET and peer employment training in Arizona. And
Yeah. Oh,
there's so many amazing success
fantastic.
stories.
Well, remember
Um,
Stacy? Uh,
yes,
she was in my peer support class, and uh, I just saw her as a brilliant student. And
yes.
she was living in her car. Occasionally, she'd stay on someone's couch. She was really struggling, but the fact that she could be good at something in class really, that's what held her in place. And during the course of the class, somehow she went to the crisis clinic. I think it was a suicide gesture. And but she was back in class the next day. So I just thought, well, yeah, well, this happens. Here you are. And she was so good that at graduation, I said, Stacy, I think I have a job for you. And sure enough, someone hired her right away. And we were both just so happy. And then a couple of days later, I saw her in the runway there outside, and she's all looking sad. And I said, what's wrong, honey? And she says, my psychiatrist won't let me come to work because I'm not stable enough. And I said, well, what can they do to us? Can they put us in jail? Can they commit us for this? And we both said no. So we both said, well, let's do it. And we did. And then I remember we went to talk to the psychiatrist, who was very grumpy and mad at both of us. But we went away happy. And she went on to be a supervisor and then a manager, and doing some really wonderful things. I think she works for NAMI now someplace.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
And she is the most creative,
Yes.
energetic, like
Yes.
innovative person. And it starts with sometimes just that one person who believes in
Yes.
us.
Yes.
And then connecting with the peer support class and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Oh, it's all so good. Mm. Well, let's talk a little bit about where you are now.
Okay.
You've just started working at Crestwood. I'm so delighted. I know you have
Yes.
a family that you just love and have a pretty happy life there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm so
So,
glad.
I worked at Recovery Innovations for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I felt there was a need, and I'd been a program director for many of those years. So I started out for like 10 years facilitating peer employment training, supervising that program. And then I started doing other roles. I became the program director for our Wellness City program,
Mm.
for our employment services program, and I loved it. I loved the process of developing and supporting and training a peer support workforce.
Mhm.
So wonderful experience. And at a certain point, and at the same time, you know, I met my partner. We've been together for I think 18 years.
Mm.
We have a 14-year-old daughter, and so there came a time when I realized that I missed facilitating.
Mm.
It was something that made me happier. It was like not going to work, it was
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
happiest I'd ever been. And
Yeah.
I wanted to be less, being a program director is wonderful. It also is, the work's never done.
Right.
And I needed some more work-life balance, and I needed to love everything
Mhm.
about my job again.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I had been in contact with Chris, and in May of 23, I came aboard at Crestwood, and I got to my trainer was Gloriana Hunter,
Mm.
who is so dear to my heart. And Chris trained me, and I got to work with Jim, and Teresa helped train me. And I feel like I'm home again, and I get to connect with you and Jean again. So life is, I wouldn't take away those whatever 10 years of being a program director. I learned a lot, not only in terms of program leadership, but also like stepping into some and supporting some really diverse kinds of peer support situations. And so now I feel like when I'm back in the role of a facilitator, and I feel like I I'm so much more equipped to facilitate, having had those experiences of very direct services. And I feel at the same time, and I am not an expert by no means. I learn more from the students that I have in class than they do from me. But I just feel like this is just the perfect fit for me right now.
Mhm.
And I have work-life balance. I have the most enjoyable, um, continuously learning experiences every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You
I
know,
hope it don't sound cliche. It's just
no,
so,
I
so
get it.
wonderful.
I get it. What I love about the work we're doing at Crestwood is we are teaching people to do peer support who are on conservatorship behind a locked door.
Yeah,
It's like these are the folks that the system didn't serve.
yeah,
The system did not meet their needs, and they got blamed for it because they were non-compliant or all those words we say. So they wind up here. And thank God we get to give them a second chance. And it's like the best possible place to be to see miracles happen.
Yes.
I mean, they're all over the place, but with this group of people, I just feel that they are finally getting what they deserve, a really strong chance.
And what amazing, smart, creative students we have in we call it our peer employment learning center training,
Yes.
PELC.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I've recently facilitated a PELC in Eureka, California,
Ah,
and started out by doing a training with staff on how to on recovery facilitation
mhm.
and on internship mentoring, because they were going to be mentors for the graduates, so the folks who were inpatient, right, who are inpatient,
Yeah, yeah.
and um, and so first trained the staff, and they were really receptive.
Ah,
And I spent 2 weeks with 8 students who had been, some of them had been in a hospital setting for 20, 30 years.
oh my goodness.
Yep. Yep. Some were folks who were kind of newer to the process, but had been hospitalized for more than a year.
Mhm.
And to see these folks, like the aha moments and the light bulbs opening
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
and doing just the top-notch peer support in every way. And it's not an easy course. You know,
No, it's not.
it's takes quite a commitment in terms of attending every day, and doing role plays, doing teach backs, telling one story. And it was just such an amazingly rich experience. And it was kind of interesting because it reminded me of back in 2005 when you and Jean, the
Yeah.
Trailblazers, had the first peer support training in the Arizona State Hospital,
Oh
right?
my gosh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
That was a fantastic experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it was an amazing experience. And again, just like in that class back in 2005, wonderful, brilliant um, people with so much to offer.
Yes.
And so they graduated, they rock and rolled, and now they're doing their internship within the hospital, the Mental Health Recovery Center
Yeah.
at Crestwood, and are doing peer support as interns and getting paid for it.
Paid for it even. Yeah.
So when they're, and some of them are already, ready to transition in the community. There's one student who said, you know what, I want to stay here a while to do my internship, and because she was so dedicated to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And uh and they're making such a difference. I saw even halfway through the training, I saw the students in class walking around in the halls and sitting down with people and doing peer support. It just came so naturally to them.
Huh, huh, huh.
Wow.
You know, that I gotta, old people have to tell all these old stories. And now that I'm old, let's go back and tell that state hospital story.
Okay.
The way that happened is uh, a friend of ours who worked at the state hospital, Amy, heard about rap. And she came to me and said, could you guys come and teach rap in the state hospital? So James and I went out there and looked the things over, and we said, of course we can do this. Be happy to do this. So James took his folks out there and they trained rap. I don't remember, 3 or 4 weeks or something. And they came back, and then the state hospital said, well, could you come and do that again? And we said, well, we could, but you've got people there who could do it. If we could come in and train them to do peer support, you would have your own internal trainers. Well, that was a big jump. It was 2 years. I remember James and I uh, left. I remember James and I walking through the parking lot, and he says, "Do you really think that?" Because I'm saying, "You guys can do this." And we're walking through the parking lot, and he says, "Lori, do you really think they can do it?" And I said, "I don't think so." Oh, that was terrible. Because they had brought up so many barriers. So it was a few months later, and I'd kind of forgotten about it. And one of them calls and says, "Okay, we've got the building now. We're ready for you to come and train people in peer support." Uh,
Yes.
so then uh, Voc Rehab, who usually paid for people, said, "Well, we can't pay. They're on the forensic side. We can't we can't pay for them." So we said to the other people that wanted to take peer support, we said, "Would you be willing to take this class in the state hospital?" And many of them had terrible experiences in the state hospital.
Yes.
Because if they would go in and take the class, we could cover most of the cost of the trainer through their stipends. And they couldn't smoke in there. They had to be, searched, all this stuff, everything. And they said, if this will help people in there, we'll do it. So half
Yes.
the class was from outside and were willing to go in.
Yep.
And and the outcome of that was we hired I think 4 or 5 people.
Yes.
One of the people was the son of the governor. And I remember at graduation, we gave every graduate a rose. And he walked over and gave the rose to his mother.
Yep.
It was just one of those moments, of, oh my gosh, amazing,
It
amazing.
was amazing. It was an amazing graduation too. His mom was the guest speaker and
All right, yes.
rocked the house.
Yeah. And
Wow.
then they taught rap in the hospital, but then the hospital would let them go out and teach rap in the community. That way we could pay them. And then they'd have to go to the hospital, back at the hospital every night. It was the craziest thing. It's like they can come out and teach classes. They're fine to do all that, drive their cars around, but they have to go back and sleep in the state hospital. Uh,
And some of those folks eventually transitioned out of the hospital
yes,
and found employment either at Meta
yeah,
Recovery
yeah,
Innovations or at another organization. So
yeah.
from time to time, I still bump into some of those graduates and
Uh, uh,
they're thriving.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I haven't seen them for a long time, but the last time I looked, they were just fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Mike, it's just been wonderful spending a little time with you. Are there things you'd like to say that you didn't get an opportunity to add in?
No, I mean, I was kind of nervous about doing this, and you just made it really feel conversational and I think, yeah, I think it's good to go.
Okay, I'm happy too. So, thank you so much. Thank you for being the wonderful person that you are and for continuing to spread your love and wisdom over people in peer support classes. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I just want to convey to you that whenever I bump into people who we knew in the old days who are still working in the system, they ask about you and Jean. They talk
Oh,
about what do they call it? The Maricopa Miracle with peer
oh,
support,
oh,
right?
wow,
They're
wow.
like Lori and Jean just um, inspired the system to change here because the way that you and Jean, your vision, uh, looked at peer support as not just like a helper job, as a real job, and
Yeah.
had Boston University study us and show the positive outcomes, and had peers working in hospitals locally as
Yes.
well as in all the clinics.
Yeah.
Um, there's peer support is thriving in Arizona and many other parts of the world too. Obviously, you've been everywhere, but I wanted to thank you for that and just for being one of the people in my life who made a difference for me, who believed in me.
Mm. Absolutely.
I remember one last thing, sorry.
Okay.
I remember because as much as I seem confident, I sometimes doubt myself a bit. And there are so many times where you're just like, do it. Just do it. You want to try it that way? Go ahead, do it.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
one time I remember I was so like feeling like I couldn't do everything. And you said, Mike, you know what? I'm giving you an assignment. I'm giving you an assignment this week to get a B. You
Oh,
always want to get an A,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm giving you an assignment to get a B and take care of yourself and know that a B is good.
Yeah. I'm glad they said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Just I think what you and Gene have done in terms of developing leaders who are now thriving and leaders in the system, doing leadership training. It's I've worked at places where leaders weren't collaborative. I worked in places where leaders were not available, and gosh, what you two have done, in believing in people, creating space for them to step into being leaders has been amazing. So
Uh,
thank you.
it's been an honor, a real honor. Well, thank you so much, Mike. I just love seeing you again. And thanks for doing this podcast with us so we can share you with more people. Thanks very
Thank
much.
you. And happy birthday soon.
All right.
All
Thank you.
right. Bye, Lori.
Okay. Bye bye. Well, there you have it, my friends. Wonderful conversation with Michael Zeeb. And if for any reason you want to get a hold of Michael to ask questions or talk about anything, feel free to send me a note. I'll hook you up. Um, in fact, maybe we can put his email address on the screen. So if people want to reach him, they can do that easily. And yeah, I know you enjoyed this. I can't imagine that you didn't. Um, we strive to give you new information and to come from a place of presence and to just share ourselves as openly as we can because we think that's what makes things really connect and feel real. So thanks for joining us. Oh, subscribe if you don't mind. That'll help us out a lot. And if you want to be a sponsor, let us know. We'd be happy to add you to our list of sponsors. There's no cost involved. And I guess that's all I have to say. So long for now. Thanks for joining us and see you next time. Bye bye.